Okay, we're live, everyone. So, good afternoon. Welcome to the live stream. This is an English teacher reacting to his student submissions. We have a task in the description. There's a link to the task, and there's a link to an example email written by me. We have 6 texts that I'm going to react to or evaluate today. Give my thoughts, talk about the strengths, what needs developing in those texts. Let's take a quick look at the task so that you know what on earth we're talking about here. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit difficult for anyone watching to follow the feedback. So, like I said, this task is linked in the description, so you can download the PDF if you want. Okay, so what are we looking at here? You are Robert, head of sales for Car2Drive, a free floating car sharing startup, currently operating in Berlin and Barcelona. All right, Sarah, the CEO, is very passionate about driving the company forward, expanding into London. Cool. So Sarah, the CEO, is writing you, Robert, an email. You're head of sales, and the situation is the company's looking to expand to London from Berlin and Barcelona. All right. Car sharing, probably all done now. We know about that. So what does Sarah say in her email? She's been busy setting up Berlin and Barcelona. And we're talking about her hometown, London. That's where she wanted to go. Second paragraph, it says people in the company are quite skeptical about the expansion. She wants to go there, but she's concerned people are a bit skeptical. And she's sent us some data. She doesn't have time to go through it herself. And she's really sorry, but she'd like us to go through the data and give her a realistic analysis of our chances of success in London. Interesting. Finally, the little sting in the tail here. We've got a PS. It says, I know that our operating zone in London is pretty limited right now, but it's just a case of reaching an agreement with the remaining districts like we did in Barcelona and Berlin. So I don't see this as a major problem. Well, I think that might be a major problem, but there we have it. So we have the boss who has a clear vision, but people in the company are skeptical, and we have some data. This is going to be a tricky email, folks, because when your boss wants something to happen and you've got this kind of worrying feeling that it's not going to happen, then we're going to have to be quite careful. We've got some rental data for each city. So this is projected data for London. You can see it as estimate here, but it's solid data for Berlin and Barcelona. Worth noting, we got price per minute 29 cents for both of these. It needs to be decided for London. But look at the daily costs, 125 euros in London compared to 80 and 90 in Berlin and Barcelona. So already, just that table suggests we might have to look at this price and go a little bit higher in London. What's this? Administrative districts. So our current operating districts, we just say you have 4 here. Islington, Tower Hamlets, Hammersmith, and down in the south in Sutton. That doesn't look great, does it? I mean, I know a bit about car rental in Berlin, where I live, and I know that it's a bit more spread out than this. We have more data on the second page. Okay, well, here is Berlin. Look, we can see that there's this big sort of operating zone in the center of the city. Barcelona also pretty much all covered, and that's a big difference. Look at how few areas are actually covered in London. So pricing seems to be something we have to think about. We can't just repeat looking at the daily costs, we can't just repeat the pricing for Berlin, Barcelona. Operating zone is going to be an issue. Then we have even more data. We got a survey now. How much you prepared to pay your daily travel. Here, finally, some good news. UK people are apparently prepared to pay quite a lot more money than the German and the Spanish customers. And then finally, we do have some comments from the sales team. So we've got quantitative data from these tables. Now we're getting some qualitative data, some sort of human thoughts. So if we look at these, other people in the company are skeptical, Sarah said. So we might see some of that skepticism here. Sarah's ambition is great, also blinding her to some major problems in the London plan. The key is pricing. Well, we suspected that pricing was going to be tricky. If we needed to get a decent margin, then great. Okay, so this person doesn't see how we can get a decent margin. We have to look at the figures again. This person says, can work in London, but the problem is negotiating with the districts. Okay, so again, this is confirming what we felt was probably the case from looking at the maps, right? They have no problem offering us a few spaces for fixed spot car sharing, but they refuse to offer us a discount on their parking fees for our cars. So if we go back up to the top, Car2Drive, our imaginary company, is a free-floating car sharing startup. So it's explained here that the free-floating concept means that you can take the car and leave it anywhere in the operating zone. The fixed spot car sharing, which I remember I used to do in London a long time ago, back in 2006, I think there was a fixed spot car sharing there. You would book the car and it was parked in a special space reserved for the car sharing company, and you had to return the car to that space. So that's fixed spot car sharing, which is not the business model that Car2Drive has in Berlin and Barcelona. But apparently the districts, and these are these districts here, where we need to get more of them, apparently they're ready to offer some fixed spot spaces. It's hard to say fixed spot car sharing. Okay, so that might be a potential little, negotiation lever we can pull later. Third person here says solutions can be found, but not in the next 12 months. And they say if we enter the market with a tiny operating area, we can forget any long-term success. If we remember, what did Sarah say? Sarah's really keen for this to happen like right now, I think. It says here, yes, in the next 2 months. Okay, so again, our colleague down here, colleague number 3, is saying that we can do this, but the time scale is a problem. So pricing is an issue. Negotiations with the districts is an issue. Possibly fixed spot could be a thing. The time scale is an issue. And then the fourth person says, if our estimates are correct, London street layout means customers will make fewer longer trips compared with other cities. All right. That's reflected, I think, in the data here. Average duration per rental, estimated that the London customers would be renting these cars for a longer time, but fewer rides per day. However, our fourth colleague here suggests a causality, saying that this might be a result of the low number of operating districts. He says if we could expand our operating zone, I'm sure this would change. We could expect the number of rentals per car per day to increase. Okay, so So this here, this number 4, that would increase, thinks this colleague, as a function of us, of Car2Drive, increasing our operating area. All right, so let's face it, it doesn't look great. It must be said. It doesn't look great, does it, for Car2Drive? So I'm back in the stream now. I see Tiger Spreadsheets has joined us. Hi, Tiger. This is Chris. I happen to know Chris. We're quite closely related. If you want to learn anything about spreadsheets, any students that watch this now or in the future, Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions, hit them up. They will sort you out with all your spreadsheet related needs. I am going to open up my texts from my students, start digging into them and seeing what they've come up with. Like I said, I have 6 texts here that I'd like to go through. For each text, I have read them and I've sort of had a little think about them, but I haven't really read them in super detail. So you'll be getting my first reaction. And I will also, once this is up on YouTube, I will put everyone's name in the description with a time code for their text. So if you've been watching this thinking, when the hell is my text up? Then you can go and click down in the description. So Tobias is our first student who has got his text done. Let's do first impressions, right? So if I was Sarah, I've sent out this email, and Robert, who here is Toby, has written this email back. And I'm getting, dear Sarah, thanks for your message and the quick briefing. I heard operations are quite stressful in Berlin, and I'm therefore happy to assist. All right, I like this intro a lot. I am stressed as Sarah. I felt stressed, and to feel that acknowledged, to see that Tobias is sort of thinking about my situation, I find reassuring. We do need to start emails with capital letters in English, which is a weird rule, right? For Europeans, for Germans certainly. we have a comma here, and then you still start with a capital letter, which seems a bit crazy. But we do. So try and remember it. In his second paragraph, Toby's gone for some bullet points. Bullet points are contentious, but I'm a fan in these kind of dense analysis emails because you've got a lot of stuff in there, right? There's a lot of ideas. And if you include some kind of like explicit formatting, like bullet points or numbered lists or something, then you're giving your reader a chance to access the core bits of the text very quickly. So she's maybe got the email, she's looking at her phone, scrolls down, she straight away sees the bullet points. It doesn't bother me. For a different kind of purpose, if you're writing a different kind of email, maybe like a sort of a motivational or a very kind of personal, sensitive email, then probably don't go with bullet points. But then the purpose has changed, right? It's not English for email writing, it's English for analysis, purpose-driven writing. That's what we're doing. So let's take a look at these. I've looked at the data you provided, came to the following analysis. We've got so we've got two different tenses. I have looked and okay, so if we're really gonna be picky, okay, we would have to make sure that the tenses are consistent in the sentence. But really, I don't think anybody watching this would have regarded that as a particularly bad mistake. Because we said I've looked at the data provided and have come to the following analysis, it would be. It doesn't matter that, Toby. Here, it would be fine to take the simple past, I looked at and came up with, or to take the present perfect, I've looked at and have come up with it, or have come to. Either one. Often it's important that you don't get those two tenses mixed up. In this case, it doesn't matter. Okay, so here are the key points. I'm just going to read this. Okay, I think that these are three good points from that Tobias has written here. It's very significant, certainly. I think that the first point, though, I wouldn't phrase it like this because the same price per minute of 29 cents. So we're talking about the same price per minute as in Barcelona and Berlin. You might want to specify that. And an estimated duration, we are well within the budget of the UK. This sounds good, but it's not good, right? You're essentially saying everybody will be able to afford our service, but we won't make any profit because we would make a loss of each a loss of this with the 4 estimated rentals. So you know what, I would say that the loss-making potential of the London plan is really the headline here. I'd be tempted to combine these into one point and say something like, even though the same pricing as Berlin and Barcelona would land us within the budget of the average UK customer, this would result in us making a loss on 4 average rentals a day, something like that. Just to combine those points and make sure that it is this one, the loss, that's the important headline, and not the fact that they're well within the budget of the UK passengers. The break-even point for London as well will be at 8 rentals per day. Okay, I agree. So, I mean, of course, there is the option of increasing the price, though, right? But then we come to that here. So I think, yeah, I mean, I wonder whether we could restructure this slightly and offer a bit more of like one sentence at the start to sort of give a headline, give a brief glimpse at what the solutions are going to be. So a sentence like, we're going to have to look at pricing and number of rentals per day. You put that in a sentence here so that we don't have to wait until here for the price increase. On the other hand, I understand why you've done it, because you want to sort of set out your reasoning before you move on to the price increase. So that also makes sense. Yeah, but I would say, okay, this is one thing I would do. I would make this into a bullet point. And I'd be tempted to even put that as a bullet point, because having these as a separate paragraph, or you could put this whole thing as a paragraph and then not use bullet points. But like I said, I mean, bullet points are okay. I think that, okay, This is what we're going to do. We're going to do some radical reformatting. How about we do it like this? We don't say that. Okay. So this would be another way of doing it. I'm not saying it's necessarily better, Toby. I think the way you did it was fine, but I think that having in this case, there's so much data, there's so much information that you're going to have to give to Sarah, that if you start by kind of setting out the conclusion and then sort of retroactively giving your reasoning, it might be more effective, or kind of keep her on track with it. However, you could debate either way. I mean, you reach the right conclusion whichever way it goes. So maybe you could do it this way or the other way. Both good options. Then we get to like the kind of the more the speculative part, right? When like what would happen. So let's just take a look at this paragraph here. Oh, I see Toby is actually watching live. That's amazing. That's amazing, Toby. Yeah, so Toby makes a good point. I had these 2 bullet points before. If we're not, we spend a lot of our time, I think, in English lessons, especially thinking, what am I supposed to do? Like, what does the teacher want me to do? What does analysis mean? And I'm a little bit inconsistent as a teacher here, because on the one hand, I'm encouraging you to listen to listen to what I say and do it how I say. I'm also saying to you, break all the rules. Don't ever think, oh, I can't do that because that's not supposed to be analysis. And it's kind of inconsistent, right? I think the important point is to be reflective and to think about your writing. Attending a live stream done by your teacher is a good way of doing that. So I think that this probably could be re-engineered, but I think that it's all solid approaches. All right, let's look at this paragraph now. So, I mean, there's some really strong language here to tap into. Is interesting phrasal verb to exploit a certain market penetration. We've got some good business vocab here, so we don't have to describe the concept. We can just say the actual word, and Sarah will know what it means because she's the boss of the company. We can break even. Okay, so we got some good specific business vocab. And I mean, the paragraph is pretty well structured. We have a topic sentence, the chances of success in London are high, and then the paragraph is about that topic. Break it all down. I guess that because I'm messing up with Toby's formatting, now it might get a bit confusing, because are we increasing the price to 52, or are we staying at 29? It could get confusing, maybe. But this is solid writing. Let's look at this paragraph. Finally, we should keep in mind that we could benefit from the first. So more good vocab here. First mover advantage. Basically, if you're the first company in a certain commercial space, you have advantages, obviously. This is an interesting idea. Basically, if we could get going, then the pressure on London authorities would increase, and improve chances of. I think that this is probably true. I mean, we had the one colleague that said, if we start with such a limited operating area, we will not be able to expand. So we have to be careful of that. But there's also the principle of getting the ball rolling, and benefiting from the first mover advantage and the sense of momentum that you would then get. I think that one thing, Toby, you could add would be to talk about the being a bit more flexible with the company's business model. This is going to keep coming up in these texts, that Car2Drive could offer districts a temporary fixed spot business plan for, say, a year. And then once you've got this momentum going and you've got the first move advantage, you could negotiate transitioning from a fixed spot to a free-floating model, which would be 2 smaller steps rather than one massive leap for the districts. Okay, so overall, strengths of Toby's texts is very accurate language, very strong sort of professional tone, and well-structured paragraphs. Development areas, maybe we need a bit more detail on how exactly we make this happen. Maybe we consider the sequencing of these points at the start to really sort of make each step in our logical reasoning clearer. But it is a tricky situation here. I think that if I were Sarah and I read this, I would be very happy that Toby had sort of reassured me that this can work, but I would be more aware of some of the risks, which is basically what, how you want her to feel. So thanks very much, Tobias. Nice job on that text. Let's go down. We've got Ninja's text now. Again, we're going to take first of all, a quick sort of first impressions. Straight away, it's more extensive. It's a longer text, 1.5 pages. And we've got also extensive use of bullet points again, and some use of bold formatting as well. Again, I appreciate and approve of this, but we have to make sure that we don't use so much formatting that its use kind of starts meaning nothing, and that's possibly a problem here. Capital letter at the start. Good job. Okay, need straight in there with a quick introduction, and then also a roadmap for the email. Because it's a long email, I really appreciate the fact that Ninja has included a little roadmap at the start so the reader knows what's going on. It's good reader awareness. Okay, then we've got some of these bullet points. Now, I think that when you have this many bullet points, you want to start considering whether it should just be a paragraph, because the whole paragraph is bullet points. Maybe. Also, if you put bullet points, you are denying the reader maybe certain connectives and certain causality or hierarchy, relational vocab, which might make the understanding easier potentially. If you do lots and lots of bullet points, you're sort of saying to the reader, it's your job to understand what the relative importance of all these points is. The assumption will always be the stuff that you say first is the most significant, unless you state otherwise. But the headline here is that Berlin and Barcelona are pretty similar. All right. I wonder how necessary it is in this email for Sarah to include so much data about Berlin and Barcelona. I wonder whether it could be summarized a little more quickly in order to get over to this stuff, which is the really important stuff she needs to know. I think it is important to know all this information, but I would favor compressing it a bit and saying something like, our numbers, our figures, our data for Berlin, Barcelona are pretty similar in terms of cost per day, price per minute, coverage, and the spending potential of our customers. And actually just put it in one longish sentence like that, because the actual figures here are not immediately required, but they might be required later in the email. So it's good that you said, let me explain our collected data to you. But the question is, why does the reader need to know that? Maybe the other approach would be to include a short sentence where you briefly explain why is that going to be necessary? Like, it's important that this is outlined because ... and then we go into it. Otherwise, you risk. It's always tricky when you're sort of saying to the reader, read the stuff you want to get to is coming, but read this stuff first. And if you just put it there, then there's a chance they just sort of skip over it, or they think, why is this relevant to me? Switching over to our perspective for London. I like the structuring language. Perspective, I think that you mean prospects, because I think Perspektive is a German word for the same thing. However, perspective probably would be okay as well. But I think you mean prospects. Also unsere Perspektive für London would be our prospects for London. Okay. Sparse, nice vocab. I'm going to add here on the upside. Just to make it feel a bit more friendly and sort of not jokey, but just to kind of show, because these things are, this is generally not great, right? Whereas on the upside, this is not bad. Secondly, okay, so now in the second part of the email. So first of all here, and then we have secondly. That's consistent. I like it. Normally we wouldn't say wanted. Normally we would just put the structural language in the present simple in emails. I want to provide you with the most important learnings for the difficult. So, I mean, this is you've put it in bold quite rightly, because this is the most important stuff. Cheers, Toby. Every now and again I have a little look. I have one screen right here, so I'm jumping between the stream and the text, but cheers, Toby. Got your message there. Good stuff. Okay, let's look at the most important learning. And this is, I think, Ninya, you know that this is the most important, that this is the core stuff, that this is the core content, and that's why you've put it in bold there. I wonder if this much text is justified. That's what I'm slightly concerned about. How's my cropping here? It still works. Good. Okay. So then. Right. Okay. Surplus, you mean margin, don't you? You mean profit margin. Later on, you do say margin here, for example. So let's keep our terminology consistent. Surplus would normally refer to some kind of additional stock that you don't need. Margin is normally what you mean for your turnover, the difference between turnover and outgoings, so your profit margin. We're talking here about per car per day, I think, right? Per car, so that margins of 12.80, 11.50 per car per day. Also, probably worth mentioning that, not that it becomes hard to understand, which is indeed great. But the problem is, there's a different potential picture for London being formed by our data. I like that sentence, being formed by our data. I mean, you're being clear that the data is driving your analysis here, but you are differentiating between the facts and the speculative situation in London, which, as we've discussed, is good analysis. We got some more bullet points. Okay. So the language in this whole email has been absolutely top notch. Just like with Toby's, there's a real kind of polite, positive, professional tone. It's very impressive, considering this is not your native language. There are plenty of native speakers in my country who could learn a lot from writing emails like this. I think that your content's great here. What I think is a bit like with Toby, I feel myself wanting just to drag this up and put it, at the start of the email somehow. Like actually go in with the key ideas, even if they have not been fully reasoned with and justified, and then bring in the justification later, which is, of course, a dangerous idea, because you risk confusing your reader, or you risk them only reading half of the email and not getting to the point where you justified it. But this is such useful content, and it feels like a bit of a slog to get through this stuff to get here. Thirdly, so this consistent here, firstly, secondly, thirdly, it's very good. It shows excellent reader awareness that you're doing this in your email, because it's a long email, but that doesn't matter because you are guiding your reader through it. Let's take a look at this one. So we got a lot of bold here. Hmm. So this shift to a less bullet pointed and a more discursive style is absolutely appropriate for this part in the mail, because we are now moving towards into speculation. Up until here, these have been pretty much hard facts. We're moving into speculation, and we're moving into a different form. Makes a lot of sense. We've got conditionals here. This wouldn't allow a lot of room. We've got causality being discussed. We've got conditionality being discussed. It's all high level stuff. Be careful of the difference between price with a C and prize with a Z or a Z, as I would call it. You have price here, though, right? Prize is something slightly different. I wonder whether this justifies a separate paragraph. Or maybe this one, possibly. Probably you consider that, but not strictly necessary. Okay, in terms of content, I think again, this would be to the point to press the nuclear button and say, how about we go for a different operating system, a different business model, and propose a compromise with the district, fixed spot car sharing for a little while. That was my idea with this. That we you suggest that as something that hopefully Sarah can live with and the districts can live with. Your proposition, though, also makes a lot of sense. So look at the vocab: negotiate, plan, execute this market entry to make it successful as possible. All in all, so very much my team and I are convinced that this. Okay, so this kind of like positive, call to action type end is really great. Underlying issues can be resolved. Passive voice to resolve. Interesting verb. Rich, dynamic use of language. Real nice. This is a little bit German. In German, sind überzeugt, comma, das. In English, we don't have that style of comma, so you can say, are convinced that this market will have great opportunities. You know what? We should maybe even just switch this up. Offer or even promise great opportunities. A little bit of personification. A verb like promise sort of slightly personifies the market. Only a person can really promise stuff, right? So you personify the market or the opportunity, the market, to make it seem even more welcoming. We're going to look at this in a future lesson. We look at writing to persuade. Such a thorough analysis. I don't think Sarah expected it, and she should be very happy. I think that your target here is to carefully think about being a little bit more selective with your content, so that you really focus in on the key content, and only include additional data as it pertains to you justifying your actual ideas. But this is some pretty picky criticism, because this is a very well written, very professional business email, and I think that Sarah will be very happy to have you on the team. So thank you very much for that text. Let's continue. And now we have Sasha's email. All right. So it's a very different approach here from Sasha. If we just compare it to Ninja's approach, doesn't mean it's better or worse, right? And you can have two very different emails that both absolutely achieve the purpose. It is not about me saying this is how you have to write it one way or the other. I'm going to set this to American English so that the Z isn't analyze. Don't freak out my computer. All right, a couple of minor things. First off, it's important that we don't use capital letters in anything other really than the names and days of the week, months, company names, product names. Otherwise, everything in lowercase. If in doubt, put it in lowercase in English. So this is kind of a cold introduction, Sasha. And this is not what you're like. I know you. You're not a cold person at all. But it sounds a little bit like, you know what? It sounds a little bit passive aggressive in English. In your last email, you asked me to do this. The culture, probably. If we look at, if you look at the task, you can look at Sarah's email. It is a bit more sort of light, and she's put like smiley faces in there and like a PS at the bottom. I think that we could open with a slightly more, like a slightly lighter, more personal intro. Also, this use of so also can risk sounding a little bit like you're doing this unwillingly. Like, so I did this, but I know that's not how you want this to sound. So here we have another issue with the verbs. I've written a report where I explain any problems and give. No, actually, no, it's fine. Where I explain and no, you know what? It's fine. Where I explain and give. That's actually completely consistent. My final expertise on this. All right. So this is really clear. I look at it and I'm like, high parking fees, low margin, small operating area. In terms of instantly focusing on the main issues, and which I was kind of criticizing a little bit in the last two texts, this delivers on that. Does it, though, oversimplify? Do you need the figures that Ninya included in her text to justify this? This is the question. Let's have a look. Our first problem is high parking fees. Districts don't want to put yes. We either try to go get some more. Okay, I agree that this is a key problem. I think that it's connected to point 3, right? The small operating area is a consequence of the failed negotiations, which are a consequence of the high parking fees. So the causality here is not necessarily clear for the reader. That is the inevitable, or maybe not inevitable, but that is an understandable disadvantage of going for the clearer, like, sort of headline approach. You might be able to square this circle by including a bit of extra language here, by being saying this is also the ultimate reason this is the ultimate reason behind problem 3 given below, and you hint at it here, and then that causality is then explained. When we are going for these speech marks in English, we need to get them at the top, both of them. German puts them both at the bottom. So you need to remember to do that. Also, generally, guys, when you're doing your writing, if you put your word processor in English rather than leaving it in German, then it will do that for you. That's a good habit to get into. I don't always do it either, to be honest. But good. Low margin, yep. You see here, you do lay out the causality, because you say from the first problem arises our second and probably most important problem, which is this is good stuff. Small difference between high daily costs and the amount of people. Yeah. So the small difference, you mean the margin. Yeah. Our daily costs on a car, 1/3, yes, and then pretty much pretty high, and all therefore yeah. Okay, so this is we can compare to Ninya's paragraph, because this doesn't contain any of the numbers. The question is, do you need the numbers, or is it enough to basically say the key problem? The price in London is going to have to be a lot higher in order for us to achieve a decent margin. One thing worth mentioning, though, And you okay, one thing worth mentioning here is that the customers in London are ready to spend more money. So that might be something you could add here. It's not all bad. There is still, I think, if you get the price at the right level, there is potential for a decent profit margin given that the daily spend that Londoners are ready to spend on transport. Small operating area, last but not least. This is a situation where you'd probably go for the present simple, as you already mentioned in your email. So have mentioned is the present perfect. That's for things where they are relating to the present somehow. And although we're talking about the email from Sarah, that email happened in the past and it's not still sort of being written now. She's not in the process of writing it at the moment. So we consider it sort of a closed event. And then we would normally say, as you already mentioned in your email. All right, pre-limited. Be careful about using the same adjectives over and over again. Pretty here. We've also got pretty somewhere else higher up in the text. I'm sure if you're watching this, you can see it and you're screaming at me where it is, but I can't find it. Pretty high. Okay. So be careful about overusing the same adjectives. Also, be careful generally about an adjective like pretty, limited, pretty high, because it's quite subjective, right? I mean, for what one person may think is pretty high or pretty low, somebody else might say, well, I don't think it's pretty low. It's really big. So it's quite a subjective idea. If you say relatively, then that already sounds a little bit more sort of objective. But then it has to be clear to the reader relative to what. Here we're talking about relative to the other markets, right? Price per minute is have to be pretty high. What you mean is compared to Berlin and Barcelona, and the zone is pretty limited compared to Berlin, Barcelona. So I think that for this reader, that reference is clear. It's going to be obvious to Sarah, but be careful that you're not expressing something with a relative association which is clear in your mind, but might not be clear in the mind of the reader. Okay, so we have some more nice structuring language guiding the reader through the text. Ah, yes, the advertising campaign. All right, these suggestions are absolutely what the company needs to do. The question is, how are they going to do it? And once again, this is where the compromise with the fixed spot parking might be a good option. I think that advertising campaign, generally a good idea. It's not clear whether Car2Drive has invested money marketing in London, but seeing as it has not been mentioned, it's pretty reasonable to suggest it here. How you like the ideas? If you don't hesitate to contact me, I would please discuss them in more detail. Yeah, we get rid of this one space, but otherwise, this is again a positive. Let's go, let's do it. Positive way to end the email. I would say the strength of this email is it's very easy to read and it's very clear. And it doesn't suffer from some of the more challenging reading situation we have up here with Dinya. But on the flip side of that, the causality isn't possibly as clear as it needs to be. There's a little vagueness in some of these vocab choices, and the solutions it's not entirely clear how we're going to do that. The text sidesteps some of the tricky issues by sort of saying we should expand the operating zone. But it's not like they're trying to do this, but they've said they can't do it. So we have to be careful about just suggesting something which has already failed, because it's not going to succeed just because we say it's going to, right? So that might be what we have to work on, a little more detail in the suggestions, but the clarity is really good, and I think that Sarah would really appreciate it. So thanks very much, Sasha. That's a very good text that you've submitted there. All right. Ngan is our next one. Let's check out the introduction. Hope you're well. Thanks. Very good. I think it's a great start. Sasha, this is the kind of start I think strikes the right tone. I was a little bit critical of your first sentence. This is a good example of an approach we could take. Metropolises. So Metropole is a German word. Always got to be careful about sort of transferring German words and thinking they're the same in English than they are. Now, this is an interesting turn of phrase. My colleagues and I are afraid to inform you that this penetration with current measures is probably not feasible. I wouldn't say are afraid to inform you. The reason I wouldn't say that is that it has the tone of something which cannot be put right. Somebody will say, look, I'm afraid to say, or I'm afraid to tell you, or I'm afraid to let you know. And it's always something really bad which cannot be put right. And here, you're not so much afraid to inform them. My colleagues and I are concerned, I would say, are concerned that this market, that this penetration group is probably not feasible. This is how I would phrase it. Same basic meaning, but subtly different phrasing, which better I think fits this this context. This is cool. Reasons, suggestions. I've not seen headings done like this, and my concern would be that people might get a bit confused and might think that this is like meta tags in the email or something. I would be sort of tempted just to format it like this, and then maybe put a code on at the end. To be honest, we maybe want to make it bold, something like that. Okay, so this numbering's gone wrong, but that was just me copying it into the text. We won't worry about that. So almost twice less than in Berlin. Tempting, is it, to say twice less, but we have to say it a different way. We have to say half. But it's half as many as in Berlin. Almost half as many as in Berlin. Or you could say half that of Berlin. Barcelona, this together. And we need one more verb here. Means we cannot guarantee growth in the long term. And the second reason, currently learners have to pay a fee. Yes, or learners are willing to pay more. This is refusal. More competitive rates than fixed spot. Okay. The phrasing here, the way you've brought in fixed spot car sharing, isn't quite right, but what you're going for is really good. You're really trying to pack the key points into short, clear bullet points, and you've done it pretty well here, I think. I would change this last sentence to what makes it impossible to implement our free floating model. Then I would say competitive rates can only be achieved with fixed spot car sharing. Just change that slightly. I'm not sure if that's what you wanted to write, but that's what I want you to write. See, what I like about it is this clever use of structural language, although conjunction. Although Londoners are willing to pay more, the city's refusal to offer us discounts makes it impossible. So you're packing a lot of ideas into one sentence, and that is what achieves the analytical depth without making the email super long and impossible to understand. So this is a good example. The fact is, yes, London are willing to pay more, and that should make it work. The reason it doesn't work is because we can't get the discounts for the parking. If we can get all of these elements, just if we can realign them and sort of shake them to reconfigure a bit, then this might work. That comes across well. And I really think it's good that you're trying to get all these ideas into one sentence. Suggestions. Okay, so optimizing, not rents, but optimizing rental price or rental pricing is what we need to talk about here. We don't want to get confused. I agree. I think this are the two most important goals. Yeah. This is a good example of again, you see, like Sasha wrote a good email, Ninja wrote a good email, Toby wrote a good email, all different approaches, all with slightly different strengths and weaknesses. What I really like about Nagang's email is that it's not getting lost in the data. It's really focusing on the key like battles, the key decisions that have to be, the key kind of trade-offs that have to happen. But the downside of that is if you kind of if you phrase it a bit wrong, then it quickly gets confusing. And yeah, that's the risk. So it's always a balance, guys, when writing this kind of stuff. To achieve these two results, our team proposed two possible tactics. So we're back in American English, which I'm fine with. I'll maybe just switch my. If you write in American English, that's cool, guys. Just make sure you keep it consistent, and I will. I can read American English. I'm analyze the possible residents. Interesting approach here to put the tactic numbered and then the justification after it. I like it. Again, it's allowing your reader multiple levels of access to the text. Yeah. Oh, so you want to analyze the positive factors and then try and sell the idea to the residents, presumably. You might want to add a bit more information there. A strong focus marketing communication plan. Okay, this was Sasha's also ideas. 2-month time. Okay. Okay. So we got a bit more language interference to bring the concept closer to the target group. Now I know, because I live in Germany, that you want to näher bringen, which is what you would say in German, but it doesn't quite work in English. You want to familiarize the targets. You want to familiarize your target group with the concept, or you want to increase the awareness of your target group of the concept, and not so much trigger their attention, but gain, win, capitalize upon. See, it changed it to a Z. And then like this. And rather than saying bring closer, I would say familiarize. Needs to familiarize the target group with the concept of freeway car sharing, and then we can take this away and gain, win, capitalize upon their attention. So just a bit of a rephrasing. It's not bad, right? It's not like people would not know what you were talking about. I spot it because I speak German and live in Germany, but it's something we should be aware of. This audience group will act as primary target. So we're struggling a little bit, aren't we, with the target? We don't want to keep saying target groups. We say audience group. You could say this market or this market segment. Will act as the primary target who have, and then you can maybe here say target customers, just to keep things fresh. On the following target, yeah. So we're getting a bit confused all the different target groups here. The ultimate goal is to gain free marketing, referrals, and word of mouth marketing. Yeah, I mean, I think this is all good stuff. But these, I mean, the marketing campaign, the word of mouth stuff, it's also like additional auxiliary strategies that would have to be built on top of a fundamental change of focus, which I think really is not so much trying to, it's switching temporarily to fixed spot car sharing, as I keep endlessly going on about. I wonder if there's an internal company hotline for. I mean, presumably they can just call you, on your phone. I don't know if you have a hotline, but good. Wish you a great start to the new week. Yeah, nice email. I think the strength here for this one again was really the focusing on clarity and focusing in on the main points at the expense of some detail, which would have been useful. But we can see, if we start combining the strengths of all the different texts, then you get something really good. But all in all, great job. Thank you very much. Thanks for submitting. We've got 2 more to go, and then this live stream is done. Long and Roxanne, who got her text in just 1 hour ago, but I stuck it in there. I haven't really read this one from Roxanne, but I'll do that live. So, Long, I know I'm mispronouncing your name, and I apologize for that, but I am working on it. So, let's take a look at the text. Dear Sarah, thank you for reaching out. I'm quite busy at the moment, but can certainly spare some time for your confusion. Okay. This is a lovely first sentence. Apart from the last word, we don't want to say spare some time for your confusion, because we may think that she is confused, but we don't want to state that. Spare some time to address your concerns. Let's just say that. It's fine for Sarah to talk about her confusion, but it's best if we don't, we don't say that we think she's confused. Okay, I've spoken to my team, looked into my own data. So in the following email, I'll give you a brief analysis consideration before taking you up on. Before taking you up. Okay, to take somebody up on something means something else. That normally means you agree to do something they suggest. I'll take you up on your offer to sell me the product. Before explaining, setting out, laying out. A couple of suggestions. All right. The other department says, blah, blah, blah. So this is interesting. I think this is the first email that's actually acknowledged this skepticism within the company. And I think this is important because Sarah's email was, yes, she wanted to know, is London realistic? But she didn't say, are the staff being reasonable because they're skeptical? But she did imply that she doesn't understand their skepticism. She is a little confused, as Long says. So I think that acknowledging that situation, acknowledging that conflict between what seems to be the right thing to do and what seems to be the feelings of the staff is good. Low potential for a decent margin, limited operating area. So we have those two problems. Solutions, we have increase in paying fee per minute, pricing, negotiation plan with districts. We know, having read quite a few of these texts by now, that these are good ideas. And I think that these headers are really good because they offer the reader straight away. We have the key facts we need. Let's take a look at this paragraph. It's a good summary of what's going on. The last sentence, the scenario presentation is still economically vague. That phrasing is a bit off, but I know what you mean. But the way you've just sort of flagged up these key points and got it all in one paragraph, which is very readable, is good. I think that does the job. Limited operating area, as you already know, it's good to acknowledge her existing knowledge, right? Acknowledging prior showing awareness of prior knowledge is one of our strategic competencies from week 1. Okay, so this isn't quite true. If you say we've only reached out to 4 of 32 districts, good job on counting the districts. It's not that they have not reached out to the others. Reached out is a kind of modern way of saying, contact somebody. They've reached out to them, but their negotiations to get free parking or cheap parking have failed. So we mustn't make it look like we haven't even talked to them. We really have, because that would be really bad. Oh, we can't move to London. Well, how many districts have you asked? 4. Okay, we'll ask the others, right? So they have done that. The problem is that they won't offer the parking discounts because London makes a lot of money from parking. Okay, let's read the rest of this paragraph. Yeah, so I think that what we're missing here is it's not been possible to negotiate a discount in rental. No, sorry, discount in parking. Let's look at the solutions. Feasible following solutions for optimizing. Okay, this is British English now, so that optimizing and that center are absolutely fine. All good, all good. Oh, where am I? Okay, here we are. Sorry. So increase in paying fee per minute. I would just say price, price per minute. So to tackle, I would propose a rise in rental fee. I mean, again, let's be clear about this. There is no set rental fee for Barcelona and Berlin. There's 29 cents a minute, but for London, it says on the task sheet, it says to be decided. Part of this task is realizing that you have to set that rental fee around 55, 56 cents a minute. Toby told us this, right? If you look at his, yeah, he proposes. Where is it? Oh, I moved it. I moved it up here. So this is the kind of area we're looking at. 52 cents, something like that. So that's not, it's not so that needs to be set at a much higher level. Okay, so how does Long suggest we have to focus on the advantages of a conventional fixed spot? Okay. Okay, I am bound to go. Okay, not I am bound to develop, but I just say I can develop. I can, or I will. I'm ready to. CVS from you. Yeah. Sub in the temporary fixed spot parking idea. And I think it's fine. I think that it's more about convincing Sarah that she could consider a different business model. You can't have everything. You can't go super quick to London, expect to make a profit with so few districts and keep your business model. Something has to be compromised. And compromising on the business model, if that means you get more districts, should get the ball rolling. These are my thoughts regarding the problem. I hope they help. Not I hope, because you're talking about thoughts, right? So if you're going to have a pronoun in this sentence like they, then it has to match with something in the previous sentence. Otherwise, they're getting it for you. So I hope they help. My thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions. Please keep up the great work in Barcelona. Yeah, why not? Why not include? It's free, right? It takes 5 seconds to include a encouraging, positive close to the email. I think it's a low-hanging fruit in terms of establishing a good relationship with your reader. This is a good text. I think the strengths are this paragraph in particular, where you manage to bring everything together, lots of different information. And I like the use of the headers. In terms of developing it, we have to be careful that we fully understand the scenario, and that we don't make things seem that we don't present the situation different to how it actually is. So it's not a rise in our rental fee, and it's not that we haven't reached out to them. Okay, in those key parts of the email, we're going to be very careful that we're not expressing things in a way that could be misunderstood. But I mean, come on, look at the language. Great email. Okay, Roxanne is the final text. If you've watched this whole video, then you're a hero. Maybe you're just watching it to help you go to sleep, which I am also fine with. It's a lot of feedback. We've been going for just over an hour now. All right. But I don't mind, because I like reading my students' texts. Roxanne says, "Hi, Sarah. I would be happy to help you." Now, Roxanne, your use of would suggests conditionality. Would is it's a subjunctive, and you haven't written it, but normally there's kind of an implication there. And I would be happy to help you if you did this. So we would maybe change that to I'm very happy to help you with this, or with this, maybe with this issue. I'm very happy to help with this issue. Below, you'll find the important points I was able to draw based on the data you sent me. I like the fact that you're differentiating between the data and the important points that you've concluded from it. It is an implicit but important distinction between facts and speculation. I would change this verb. I wouldn't say draw. You draw the conclusion. So the important conclusions I was able to draw. If you're going to say important points, I'd be tempted maybe to say determine based on the data you send me. I think that works better with points. Conclusions, then draw would be fine. Observations. And then analysis of causes. Good headings. Let's take a look at these bullet points. That's a good summary. You've included some of the figures, but you've kept it short and to the point. I think this is pretty good. Car2Drive is planning to expand its area of operation in 40 years. Yeah, the comparison is there. Looking at the data, we see that young Londoners are willing to spend twice what the Spaniards and 5 times more than Germans. All right. I think I'd probably say Spanish customers and German customers. It's weird, isn't it? Like Londoners, they like being called Londoners, but it feels kind of archaic to say Spaniards. I'm not quite sure why. Spanish people. I don't know. I associate Spaniards with like history books for some reason. And of course, we're not talking about Germans, we're talking about Berliners, and we're not talking about Spaniards, we're talking about people from Barcelona. I don't even know what they're called. There's probably a Spanish word or a Catalan word for people from Barcelona. Let me know in the comments. All right. Your observations are relevant and well expressed. I don't know if I'd call them observations. I might be tempted to say key conclusions from the data. Or an interesting word that Ninya was using was learnings, kind of a newish word, but I think it's cool. I also hear people saying takeaways, which makes me think of food and pizza, but you can also say takeaways in a kind of more modern way, a more kind of, I don't know, like a more kind of dynamic new business way of saying conclusions. So that might be some options for that. They're not quite observations, because an observation is more connected with science or like natural history when you're observing a process. It's not bad though. I just think that these might be a bit more fitting here. Analysis of causes. Let's take a look at this. Interesting analysis. You've determined that the fewer longer trips is not because of the lack of operating districts. It's because the population are more easily able to use public transport. I'm not sure whether that's the case. I'm not sure what you're basing this on. And I think that this sentence would need to be hedged. Rather than saying the result is easily identifiable, you might want to say the result could be that the local population can more easily use public transport. So the use of could is building in a level of uncertainty into the sentence, which is good here because we don't know this is true. This is our speculated causality. We don't know this. It's not, so it's informed speculation rather than fact. It's important we don't present the conclusions that we are drawing from the data as facts, because they are not in themselves facts. They are informed speculation. From this analysis, we can understand the close correlation. So, I mean, I am loving the kind of sciencey vocab here. Analysis, close correlation. A minimized presence we force. A short trip does not. Yeah, okay. So now you do talk about the districts. Interesting. By minimizing our presence, we force customers to use. I wouldn't say but when you say by minimizing our presence, that sounds like we're doing it intentionally. I would say as a result of our limited presence. I'd be tempted to say coverage rather than presence as well, because we're talking about the extent to which their operating area covers the city centre. Presence is good. You'll be present on the market. But here I think coverage works a bit better. We fall with, and I would say we are forcing. Why? Because it's important that we want to sort of indicate this is not a permanent arrangement. This is the current situation, and we are forcing customers to use other services. It must be said that they haven't started in London yet. So what we should be doing is actually saying we would force customers to use other service where if we were to launch. It's all in the hypothetical right now because the company is not yet launched in London. So um, we would force would be technically what we should say here. The other formulation is grammatically fine, but in terms of the context of this simulation, we should be saying would force. Ba, ba, ba. Interesting speculation here on the motivation of the customers. High level of comfort customers are, yeah. I think again, let's hedge this. Not can be explained, but might be explained by. There's a subtle difference, right? We don't want to be just presenting what we think is the case, what we think is happening as the truth, because it's not. We can say, but our boss does want our thoughts. Just important that we move away from this indicative, this is fact, towards a more speculative, this might be explained. So let's take a look at these suggestions from Roxanne. Okay, interesting. So 33 cents a minute is the suggested price from Roxanne. That does work, but it is essential to increase the area of presence. So this coverage we're talking about. This price, this such a low price, will only work if you have lots and lots of use. Because of the high, yeah. So the assumption is that you can increase the coverage, then have many more trips a day, and then you can start making this profitable. But it would only work if also the costs for the car per day were reduced from their current level of 125 euros a day down, and that comes with the parking reduction, the parking discounts with the districts, which is why again we should take a look at the option of negotiating fixed spot parking for a temporary period of time. So what's missing here really is a sense of how this could be achieved. You're absolutely right that this is what the goal has to be. What we would need is a bit more information on how we get there. But it's hard. The simulation is complicated. So the strengths of your text, Roxanne, really great summarizing. Knowing to pick out of all that data, knowing to pick which parts out so you put it in one sentence or two sentences and instantly sort of bring the reader up to speed, give them the full, the full summary they need is really a skill. It's an important skill. And you've shown it, you've done that really well here in this first part. Be careful about what's actually happening in the simulation, not that you present, things that are happening which aren't. And do be careful about presenting your speculation. It is the right thing to do. Speculating, saying, I think this could be happening or this might be the reason. You should do that, but you should always hedge the sentence. If you look at our guidelines for analytical writing, then you will see that the hedging is explained there, just using the word can rather than, using the word might rather than can, shifts the sentence from certainty to highly probable. And that allows the reader then to understand where you're coming from, where you've established fact and where you're speculating. But overall, really good stuff. So look at all this stuff. We've read all these 6 texts now. Great work from my students. Lots of different solutions here from Tobias, Ninja, Sasha, Ngan, Long, and Roxanne. I was very interested to read those different approaches, folks. It's important to realize that there's not one way of achieving this. All of the texts had definite strengths, and all of them had areas that we need to look at. One thing that kept consistently coming up is the differentiating between fact and speculation, but a lot of us are getting very good at that. Another thing that kept coming up is how do we decide what to confront our reader with when? Like, do we go in with the full justification without them knowing what we're trying to justify, or do we go with a plan for which there is initially at least no justification? It's a real quandary. It's a real quandary for the stressed business person trying to write an effective email. And I think that you can't always fully figure it out 100%, but always thinking, if I were the reader, what would I need to know? And then if you are going to front load your email like Ninja did with quite a lot of data, maybe be even more explicit about saying it is essential. I know this seems like a lot, but it's essential that you know this in order for the next bit to work. Or if you're going to flip it and go in with like an idea, like I suggested Toby did, to then say, this is my plan. Don't worry, I'm going to explain my reasoning below. So you really allocate 10, 50, maybe even 20% of the body of your email is not about your ideas or your analysis or your explaining, but it is your packing language, the language with which you deliver those ideas to the reader. Sometimes I talk about a salad dressing ratio. You know, you have like 70% oil to 30% vinegar, 25%. The same in the text. If your text is just content and you don't have that meta structural language, delivering that content into the reader's brain in such a way that the reader's brain is able to take it on, then it will not be successful. So analysis is very much about focusing on the content, then having the discipline to take your mind back to the reader and say, these ideas will only work if I can, Germans would say verpacken, if I can pack them, deliver them in a form that the reader can deal with. So that's what we really have to think about. It's been a pleasure reading your texts. Check out the links below, time codes in the description for your text. And I'll see you on campus in a few days. See you then.